Hello, and welcome to the All Things Narrative Podcast, where we explore the relationships between the stories we love and the stories we live. I'm your host, Derek Hatch, and let's get started. Oh, what is that?
I don't know. Isn't that your theme song?
Is that how you interpret it?
It's
hard. Yeah.
Is that something else?
Maybe.
It's like a mix of things, maybe. I don't know. But welcome to the All Things Narrative Podcast.
That one's different, but I've heard that one.
We are recording this from a beach house where we are having our podcast retreat right now.
We up. we up.
That's right. We're having a good time out here, y'all. So it is good to have you here.
Need a pouring drink sound.
It's good to be here, Derek.
We had a chainsaw sound in the last episode.
Yeah,
so
that's what we
I think
need.
we got to make Nick in charge of sound effects.
Yeah, insert where's the rum gone?
Yeah.
Real quick.
Why is all the rum gone?
Life like this sure is sweet, isn't it? It sure is.
I am the protagonist. All right, anyways.
Oh, man.
We are going to start to wrap up this genre series that we've been doing with 2 final episodes. So we got one today and one in December. We're going to cover slice of life, which is basically everything that doesn't fit in the other genres. But before we get there, we're going to touch on something that this is not considered to be like one of the quote unquote like main genres, like in the screenwriter's taxonomy. This is considered to be a macro genre, whereas most of the genres we've talked about are super genres. There's a reason why I want to talk about
micro genre.
The superhero genre isn't a super genre.
I want to talk about the superhero genre for 2 reasons. Number one, it's clearly in the last maybe like 15 years or so, it's been like one of the top genres, right? When it comes to box office and films and overall pop culture popularity. But I also want to talk about it because it intersects with other genres in really interesting ways. Because that's what we're going to see here is like, how does the superhero genre connect with other genres? Now, of course, other genres can get spliced together, right? That's very common. But there's something interesting about the way the superhero genre does that. And so that's what we're going to talk about here today. So yeah, if you feel like we've done like why we love Marvel, why we love Spider-Man, why we love X-Men, why we love Batman. We've heard Nick go on and on about Batman Returns and, like we've talked a lot about superheroes, but I promise you stick with us for this because not only are we going to do it a little differently and talk about these genres, but I'm also going to offer a criticism about the genre that I want to kind of get your reaction.
A criticism?
Yeah, a criticism. Because this is right now the most heavily criticized genre.
The superhero?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think Martin
Scorsese,
was
yeah.
talking. Yeah.
That's what a lot of people think of first. And he recently, at the time of recording this, has come out with new comments about the superhero genre.
Like how film is dying and stuff like that because this generation doesn't know anything but superhero genres.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about the ramifications of
true.
the superhero genre. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about the
point.
ramifications. So stay tuned for that as well. But for now, let's go ahead and get into this.
Viewers, real quick, Joe took his shirt off. I just need you to know.
First off, I'm married. You can't be telling the viewers all that. You can't be putting all my information like that, all right? I put a different shirt on. I put a long sleeve shirt because it was cold where we're recording.
They're both blue.
I like blue.
Jason, can you please narrate everything that happens as it happens?
There's a dog.
They
out
need
there.
it.
There's a dog?
Very good. Good job.
Oh my gosh, holy sh**. All right, here we go. So, the superhero story embraces the pattern of the hero's journey. Superheroes first undergo an origin story that made them who they are. They are then challenged to find their place in the world, often balancing between the mundane and the extraordinary. Their stories usually culminate in making a choice that sets them apart from a villain, one that is often sacrificial and indicative of the tough choices we must make in life. Their ultimate goal is to undergo a transformation that will help them defeat the villain that opposes what they stand for. Superheroes take responsibility for the brokenness of the world and act nobly, helping as many people as they can along the way. These stories inspire us to take whatever we've been given and use it to act heroically, even if it costs us something. So yeah, it's the superhero genre. And so Joe and I, we have that's I feel like what our friendship like kind of started out with, right?
Yeah.
Was like just our connection and
superheroes.
bonding.
Yep.
Yeah, being in your office
Yeah.
your classroom, like right every day, and
My
just
classroom
being
is
like,
the hangout room.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Generational hangout room.
I sleep in there too sometimes.
Yeah, I sleep in there sometimes too. Not together, audience.
We have separate beanbags.
So we all have superhero films that we like, and we have some that we probably passionately dislike. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to take you through some of the different genres that we've talked about. So it's going to be kind of like a recap of some of the different episodes that we've discussed.
Can we say if we like it or dislike it?
Absolutely. Yeah, please. Like
Nice.
by all
Yeah.
means, okay?
Or a rating?
So if you're not super familiar with these genres, feel free to go back and listen to them, check them out. We'll talk a little bit about how they interact. So the superpower of the superhero genre is it's the way that it can blend with other stories and yet retain its identity, right? So everything that I just described there can still be true, even if the superhero story is told within a larger genre. And so let's take a look at some of these here. So the first one I'll bring up is the superhero genre and the romance. So the ones that immediately came to mind for me were the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films and the Mark Webb two Amazing Spider-Man films. So you see, like in the beginning of Spider-Man 1, Tobey Maguire says, like, this is a story all about a girl.
Yeah.
Not a typical start for a superhero story. And even though it's an origin story,
It's still there's still a love story.
yeah, the
Yeah.
love story, I think, with both the Raimi films and the Mark Webb films, the love story is the heartbeat of those films, right? There's a lot of stuff in there, especially in Spider-Man 2, about like, well, what does it mean to be a hero, like, right?
Yeah.
And I love all that. But I think the romance, my wife Tori didn't really like superhero films, but she always liked those films. And the romance was a huge part of that, right? So what are your guys' thoughts on the Sam Raimi, the Mark Webb, on those Spider-Man films, and specifically how they relate to the romance genre?
Well, Gwen is better than MJ.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, Gwen is definitely better.
I don't think so. But okay.
Listen,
Nice.
MJ was not a good girl for Peter.
I would like to hear, because I re-listened to our Spider-Man episode, and we got into this debate there, right? I would love to know, like, Nick, what's your take? Because you love the Raimi films. So what's your take on, like, especially in Spider-Man 2, but even in Spider-Man 3 as well, there's a lot of...
MJ's trash.
There's a lot of...
I don't know who's worse, her or Jean Grey
There's
in the X-Men movies.
Well,
Whoa.
there's a lot of
That's
things
pretty
about
bad.
their romance that are little
toxic.
toxic, yes, right? I mean, you ever...
What's toxic about? Don't go into the third one because I don't know the third one that well.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's stick with the second one.
We can stick with the
'cause
second
there's
one,
some
how-
stuff
Please
there.
remind me.
We can
please.
stick with the second one, how she was with somebody, but then she still likes Peter, and then she left some dude at the altar for Peter. We can talk about how, about
I
MJ.
don't remember that.
Oh, you know. Well, I do.
At the altar.
At the altar, yeah.
I don't remember that.
JJ's son, because
Left
the
at the-
astronaut.
Yeah.
I don't even remember
that.
him. I don't remember
Well,
him at all.
there's other stuff too about MJ where she's like, "Oh, I'm seeing someone." Like she's only with this guy just to try to get like Peter, and then Peter starts noticing, and then she's just like,
Yeah.
"You."
Only.
It's-
It seems like she only wants a man for affirmation for herself.
So when I said that, I just think Kirsten Dunst was a better actress.
Then Emma Stone.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, but you're,
I'm not with
I can't agree with that either. However,
So what about Spider-Man 2 makes it such a good movie? Because overall, Spider-Man 2 is probably considered, I mean, at least for me, but I think overall, critical-wise, it's considered better than The Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh, absolutely.
So what
Absolutely.
about that? What about that makes
Doc
it better?
Ock.
It might
No,
not be
it's
the
not just
romantic-
Doc
It's
Ock.
not-
Yeah.
I think it is the heart of the heart of Spider-Man 2 is just very warm. It is romantic, and it's way more romantic than the other movies. So why is it like that? Like, what is there?
All right, fair. All right, that's fair. That's
I
fair.
think part of it is that the film is just really well made. It's really well crafted. And it's hard to find a lot of flaws except these little nitpicks like what we're doing right now.
So you nitpick them to death. Go ahead.
I'll dig
Whereas-
I'll dig
Still
it to
better.
death.
Whereas I believe that the Amazing Spider-Man films have a lot more flaws that are very, very noticeable to pretty much anybody, right? There's a lot of flaws there. But at the same time, I think the beauty like that's there might be a little harder to see and appreciate, but I think that's kind of what I'm drawn to them is that you have to there's more there than meets the eye.
Oh, that's a Transformers line. More than meets the eye.
Oh, hey, look at that.
That's going to be for a future podcast as well.
He has
Bet.
the cube.
Yeah. The boy has the cube.
Oh man. The Raimi films I think are at least the first two I think are better films. But I think like in terms of the romance cuz I really want to stick just to the romance part of it, right? Romance is all about longing. What are we longing for most in life? And I think both Peters, whether it's Tobey Maguire's or Andrew Garfield's, right? They are both longing for a life where they are not living a fractured, fragmented identity. And the question that both of those films is trying to answer in regards to the romance is, can I still do what I love? Like my creative, my passion, what I give to the world as Spider-Man, can I still do that and be with someone that I love?
Yeah.
And I think that's what the heart of it is, right? Is they both want to reconcile those two things.
Yeah.
They want the Peter Parker and the Spider-Man. They want to be able to be with somebody. And that's in Spider-Man 2, like that's the ending of the film is Mary Jane saying, I'm going to commit.
with you.
She's standing
Yeah.
in a wedding dress. So the imagery is super right on the nose there. But it's almost like she's making a covenant with Peter in that moment. Like, I will be by your side and I will not keep you from doing this. And in Amazing Spider-Man 2, a similar scene happens on the bridge
Yeah.
with Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, right? With Peter and Gwen there, where there's like almost like a covenant type of thing that's being made there. And then, of course, we know that it ends tragic for Andrews, but
So
yeah, it
then
doesn't.
she is the better girlfriend because she stayed alive. And they're still
that's
together.
it?
They are still together though.
Yeah, they're still together.
Not that she's alive. That she committed and they're still together.
Yes.
yeah.
Well, she committed.
a little bit different.
Gwen committed too. She just died.
Yeah.
Well,
she
you
didn't
can't-
make it. She didn't make it.
But what he's saying is stop hating on MJ.
I'm
Because
not-
MJ stuck it through.
That's
That's
fair.
what he's saying.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So MJ's longing just like everyone else is longing, even if she's a little confused.
Yeah, well, that longing is that key word. That's
So the
really-
more confused that these characters are, the better the romance at the center of the story is,
Yes.
and that's why we watch them, and that's why
see,
it's better.
That's you got Nick. You got Nick to go full circle.
It took a minute. It took a minute.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. There.
Gotta say one jarring thing.
Jason was a catalyst.
Yep.
Ah, I gotta. Oh yeah.
So I'm here, guys.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So
She-
those films are great examples of romances there, where despite all the superhero stuff going on, I think we're more invested in what's going to happen with them as a
Yeah.
couple, right?
But Gwen and Spider-Man are so cute, though.
They are.
They're the cutest in the movies. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Yeah, but I don't like it, and I don't like either one of them. So
You don't like Emma or?
no, I think I just like
just
the tension.
stop.
Yeah, that might be a.
I think the Amazing Spider-Man 2 speaks to like I have two like deep fears. Two deep fears in life. And the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is probably one of the only films I've seen that actually really displays that fear in a real way. And that is the fear of not being able to protect someone you love in doing something that you love. I had a moment when I was walking on the beach earlier when I was thinking about all the things we're going to do with this podcast and dreams and ideas we have, right? And you know what? You know whose voice came in my head of all people's?
Andrews.
It was Gwen Stacy's voice.
Wow.
And she said,
I'm telling Tori.
even if we fail, what better way? Tori is my Gwen.
Yeah, but like, that's the same person.
Even if we fail, what better way is there to live?
Oh.
Nice.
And I'm just like, gosh, that's it. That's
Nice.
it for life there, right? So anyways, the romance. Sticking to Spider-Man here, I want to go to the next one here because this one was a bit harder for me to figure out. And that was the metaphysical journey. I was like, what superhero story is a metaphysical journey? I struggled with it for a while until I started looking through my list and thinking, wait a minute. There's 2 films on here that they're not quite sci-fi. They're not really romances. They're not they don't fall in any of these categories. And then I really started thinking about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're metaphysical journeys. And that's the 2 Spider-Verse films. So the first film, the metaphysical journey, is learning like this leap of faith, right? That is the heartbeat of the film, is about somebody coming into an identity and having some sort of, the metaphysical journey is like that philosophical, spiritual, or religious like epiphany, right? That changes how you live. And I think it's a story about Miles's perspective changing on himself and how he engages the world around him. That's really what the film is about, more than the multiverse or Kingpin or any of that stuff. But what we haven't talked about yet, because it came out this year, was the second film, Across the Spider-Verse. And this one, I think the metaphysical journey is even more apparent. Because you're like, what's the conflict of that film? It's the Spot, it's Miguel, right? That's the external conflict. But what's the real internal conflict of Across the Spider-Verse?
It's Miles believing in himself.
Yeah. Him coming into his own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's something really meta about the film and the journey that he goes on there. So, and I think it's both Gwen and Miles that are on different metaphysical journeys in that film.
Gwen's horrible in that film.
I
by
will
the way.
not lie, Gwen is horrible in that movie. Yeah. That's a different universe, Gwen.
Yeah, Gwen's horrible.
Yeah.
Wait, why horrible?
She played Miles, Miles.
But I think that's part of her journey. Her metaphysical journey is like, think about it. When you're young, you're trying to figure out what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's not good, right? She's trying to figure that out. And I actually like really commend the film for taking someone who is a very likable character and giving them a really hard journey to go on. I think in a lot of films, they tend to Mary Sue a lot of female characters where they just make them awesome and good at everything.
And
they, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Admit it. Take a shot. Take a shot.
It's not Saturday morning right now.
Oh my gosh.
But Gwen actually has a journey that she's on where she has to, she even says, like with her dad, like, I don't even know what's right anymore. The film starts with a daughter who's feeling alienated and isolated from the people around her. And her metaphysical journey is that she needs to learn. She can't run away. She has to connect.
Yeah.
Right? She has to connect with her. Starting with her father and then eventually with Miles again. But she has to try. Like, she can't run away. And like that scene, like the way they depict the watercolor with the emotions,
and it was
right?
just draining. Yeah, that was beautiful.
And I'm like, that's a metaphysical journey right there. Like, we're literally seeing the inside outside, reflected outside. We're seeing her emotional, mental state, like reflected in a physical setting, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the metaphysical journey right there, is her like literally trying to process this and showing us this. And that moment when she says, like, Miles like taught me like anything is possible. And that for her is not like I can go conquer the world and do anything. It's I can make things right with my dad again.
Yeah.
And
That stuff
we
always
can be a
gets me.
family again.
Yeah.
And Miles is on a different metaphysical journey because his whole story is about belonging. His story is about, his parents are trying to protect him and keep him from these different things in the world. And Miles is trying to find his people. And he thinks the spider people are his people. And he thinks that that's going to be his place, that that's going to be what brings it to him. But his metaphysical journey that he has to learn, it's essentially, I call this moment, this is a very like Protestant moment in a film where you have like a character, like kind of like Martin Luther and the Reformation, right? You have this whole group like Catholicism that is essentially saying like this is canon, don't veer from canon, and Martin Luther standing up and saying like I have to do what I believe is right. That's very much like what I believe. What I see Miles doing is like what happens when the group when that becomes a hindrance to identity.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I was just thinking, that it's him accepting his own identity, like not just having his identity placed in other people.
Right. Because he's really trying to wrestle with like, what does it mean to be a Spider-Man? And he is like, I believe that to be a Spider-Man is you save someone no matter what. If you have the ability to do it, you do it, right?
Yeah.
And all these spider people have lost sight of that. It's interesting because it thinks about how sometimes with conformity and groups, we can lose sight, we can lose our values, or we can at least lose sight of them. We can compromise them. The metaphysical journey that we need to go on in that moment is we need to wake back up to what we know is good. And that's what Miles is doing. And that's what, at the end of the movie, the other spider people are doing, is they are waking up to what the center of the myth of the story of Spider-Man is.
See, but Spider-Punk was already woke. See, my brother was already woke. He was already aware of what the system was doing. See?
He saw it, right?
As soon as you said my brother, I knew how this was going. I thought you were about to sit up in your chair.
But no, he was the one out, and when you go back in the movie, you can see he was already plotting to get Miles out. He was the only one speaking to Miles.
Yeah.
Like, hey, use like calm down, use your electricity.
Right.
Like, he was getting stuff for his little portal wrist thing. Yeah, he was dope. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Spider-Punk was a dope character.
He's one of my favorites in the movie.
Yeah.
He tripped me out visually, but I liked him.
Yeah.
He was hard to look at.
Yeah.
That boy kept changing.
Yeah.
I had to squint my eyes.
There's some old eyes, Jason.
Yeah.
Man, it hurts.
Yeah. Well, and this is a movie really about stories too, like about what stories are, right? So it's like the movie opens with Gwen narrating both Miles's story and her story.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, right? Because this is a lot of what I talk about with narrative therapy is like we go through our lives, by telling our story, it reveals things about how we see ourselves and how we interpret our experiences and how we see our identity and our place in the world and our relationships. So you get a sense of that in the beginning with Gwen narrating her story and how how she defines herself, how she sees herself. And then Miles also narrates his own story. We get to hear his perspective on his story. And then right after that voiceover of Miles doing it, we see that scene with the guidance counselor and his parents. And the conversation is all about story, where the guidance counselor is saying, like, you were this, you were that, you came from this, you came from that. She is trying to tell his story for him. We heard Miles' story just a moment ago, the way that he sees it. But now we have another character trying to do that. And that's like one of the central themes of the film is everybody else trying to tell your story for you and define your story for you. But you ultimately have to have agency and do that for yourself.
That's good.
So his parents try to do that. The guidance counselor tries to do that. And then she says, like, that's your story. Now stick to the script. And it's interesting because that's the metaphysical journey that Miles has to go on is, well, what is my story? And he literally says in this movie, everybody is trying to tell me how to live my story. I'm like, this is the most narrative therapy movie
I'm gonna do it my own way.
I'm gonna do my own thing, right? And and that's what Miguel is fighting against, because Miguel is saying, and Miguel is not wrong when he says this, when he says that our stories are our lives are woven together. Like, that's true, right? Our lives are woven together in very mysterious ways.
Yeah.
So it's not, I like that there's a moral ambiguity about what Miguel is saying.
Yeah.
Because he's not entirely wrong in some of the things that he's saying. It's the conclusions that he's drawing from these things.
But he's drawing this from a place of trauma, and instead of a place of accepting what has been lost and moving past that.
100%. That's it. And Miles changes the story. He changes the story for Spider-Man India when he saves his girlfriend and the father, right?
Yeah.
The police captain. He helped someone's story. And that's what Miguel doesn't like. He's like, well, the story has to go this way. And how many people do we know, listeners out there as well, how many of you guys know people that have tried to dictate or tell you like what your story needs to look like? What does it need to conform to? And we call these in narrative therapy discourses, these kind of established, normalized ways of being dictated by a culture or group that we're in. And that's what Miles is doing, is he's challenging the discourse of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And Miguel is supposed to represent us, like the fans who are saying it has to be this way.
It has to be canon. It has to be canon.
Last Jedi.
Yeah. Oh, this is the Last Jedi.
Wait.
This is the Last Jedi of, oh yeah, another shot. Gosh, dang.
There you go. Poor.
But yeah.
Sure is Last Jedi.
And it's interesting because when that Miguel and Miles have that big fight on the train,
Yeah.
Miguel says, who do you think you are? He's attacking his identity.
Yeah.
And that's when Miles starts telling his story. He says, my name is Miles Morales. I was bitten. And I'm like, this is so narrative. This is everything like what I try to talk about. You literally have someone asking who you are, and Miles just starts telling his story. I almost cried I almost got up and started cheering. I'm like, this is literally why my business exists, is when somebody asks you that, you tell your story, right?
Yeah.
So that's the metaphysical journey that I think we all got to go on.
I like that. I didn't really realize that it would be considered that, but that's dope.
That's my theory, at least. I could be wrong, but that's what I see when I watch that movie.
I like that theory.
Solid Snake.
Anything
You
else?
like that deal?
I like that deal.
Damn good deal.
All right, let's move on to the next genre. So the next genre I have here is the action genre. The action genre is all about testing a protagonist, right? This is the episode that Proverb was on. And we talked about how, like, whether it's James Bond or Die Hard.
Side note, the action genre, that's what it's about, testing the protagonist.
The action genre, yes, it's about testing a protagonist through external challenges and circumstances. That's it in a nutshell. So this includes, I'll give some examples here, because on first glance, a lot of people will say, well, all superhero genres are action films. And I'm like, no, they have action in them, but that doesn't mean they're action films. So these are ones that I think are, by definition, action films. Batman Begins, the Iron Man films, Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Civil War, the Black Panther films, Deadpool, and Kick-Ass. I think those are all examples of action films where they are all about testing a protagonist, pushing them to their limit through a series of external trials and circumstances. So what are your thoughts on that and how it relates to any of these films?
I think my favorite is Civil War out of all of them, because of thinking of like specifically the end. Tony had to watch his parents die and then see the man that murdered his parents standing right next to him, and his best friend knowing that that the other friend killed his parents and said nothing for years. Yeah. Of course we're throwing hands, like immediately on sight. That's all I got to say. I just understand that conflict more than anything.
Well, that one's about testing a relationship, right? Through action. So that's an interesting way to look at it. I recently rewatched Winter Soldier, and that's a great that's a great testing, right? Because it's testing both physically, yes, particularly with Captain America and Winter Soldier, but it's also testing mentally, like, what does it mean, like, for me to do this if I can't trust my own government?
That's also testing their relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything about those action films? Have you guys ever seen Kick-Ass?
Yes.
No.
You haven't?
No.
Nick, you would love it.
Yeah.
You would love it. Joe, you have, right?
No, I haven't.
Oh
I've seen it.
Do you think they would
Wow,
love
this
it?
is the first.
Yeah.
I've seen a movie. Let's go.
You would
Part
like it
one
because
for
it's super
the
dark.
everyman.
Because the premise of
Isn't
Kick-Ass...
Nicolas Cage in it?
Yes.
Okay.
And
I like
he's the best part of the movie.
I love Nicolas Cage.
But Kick-Ass, essentially the premise of it is what happens when somebody who's like a fan of superheroes tries out in the real world to go out and do it.
Do-Rag Man. My superhero.
Blank
Man. You ever see Blank Man?
No, I never seen Blank Man.
Marlon Wayans way back. No, Damon Wayans way back in the day.
That's funny.
Like 90s.
And I love that like Kick-Ass, like it starts off
That's the
as like
original
this,
superhero.
like the first half of the movie, Jason.
Blade?
This
I think it is before Blade. Go ahead.
Keep talking, Derek. Talk over them. I'll show you how to talk over them.
you're an expert at that.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's
I have the volume.
I love how it starts off as a comedy, right? Because it's like this very like, oh, I like superheroes, I like comic books, I can do this. But then
He gets beat
once he
up.
starts getting into it, it turns into a drama.
Really?
And because the action, how far is he willing to go to actually be a superhero?
Isn't it Quicksilver?
Is this Kick-Ass?
It is Quicksilver,
Yeah,
yeah.
Quicksilver's kick-ass.
Yeah. The scene that they broadcast over the internet.
Oh,
that
when he's
part.
just getting like bloodied.
Yeah. And I'm like, that is what would happen. Like if
Yeah.
somebody really had a costume and went on, some sick person would take them and live stream. That is not far off. And that movie gets so freaking dark. I remember that movie being advertised as a comedy. And then I watched it and it takes such a hard turn. And I'm like, oh my God, like
Okay.
this movie is brutal.
Okay.
It was so, guys, this movie was so controversial when it came out because of Hit Girl.
Yes,
Hit
the
girl.
little girl.
There's like this 11-year-old girl who's like cussing up a storm, slicing people's heads off. It's like
It's kind of cringy too.
Logan took that. to
Yeah.
another level.
Yeah.
Logan
Logan's way
could not have
brutal.
happened without
Yeah.
Kick-Ass. Like that, and that film was
Kick-ass
so
walk so that
controversial.
Logan could run.
Yeah. Kick-Ass kicked ass so that Logan could kick more ass.
Could slice it.
Slice and dice.
The dice.
Oh man. Okay, so let's move on from action here. So the next one is fantasy. So we've talked about fantasy here. The fantasy genre is really about either a protagonist entering an imaginative, creative world. They're from the right, or it's what Tolkien calls like a pure fantasy, where essentially like the whole thing takes place in a different world. But it's really about exploring like these larger than life concepts through mythological, archetypal beings that really help us to figure out what we want in life and how to navigate that. So some examples of fantasies here would be the Thor films, the Guardians of the Galaxy films, which are considered like space opera fantasy. Doctor Strange, the first one, not the second one. Zack Snyder's Justice League, and of course, Batman Returns.
I just
So how's-
thought of another
And
one.
of course.
Which one? Which one, Jason?
He-Man would be one of those.
He-Man.
He-Man. Oh,
He-Man is a
absolutely.
superhero
He-Man.
fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how is
Masters
Justice
of the
League?
universe.
How is Justice
Zack
League?
Snyder's Justice
Yeah,
League,
how
because
is
we're
that
not
one?
speaking about the abomination.
No, we're
of
not
the-
talking about the this what is it, the Whedon cut or whatever it is.
Yeah,
The Justice League.
the Justice.
We're not talking about that one.
No.
But how is that?
So let me ask you something. You recently rewatched it, right?
Yes.
So what do you think from watching it? What do you see that's fantasy about it? Because I know, but I want to get your perspective.
I mean, literally, it's kind of just other earthly, but you said it's someone stepping into that world, and the only one I can see.
Well, it could be, but it could also be about another world.
Okay, yeah, but that's okay. Well, then it's a completely different world. I feel like the difference between the Snyderverse and like the Marvel universe is that you could kind of see that the Marvel universe is based on real world like
Right.
stuff. Like you can place it in the real world. But like with the Snyderverse, when it was just Zack Snyder doing his own movies, it besides Man of Steel, everything else feels completely alien in that
And
sense.
stylized, like hyper stylized.
stylized. But that's like his creative touch, anyways. Like it's everything he does is more like a, I guess, otherworldly type of vibe, anyways. So is that kind of like what it is because he stylizes his?
I think that's part of it, but I
Okay.
think another part of it as well is that characters serve as like mirrored reflections of our reality, but they're exaggerated
Okay.
to an extent, and that they represent different facets of our existence. So each member of the Justice League, the central theme of the movie is family, but each character represents a different way that explores family.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get into each one of those, and even Steppenwolf, the villain. There's a
There's
connection
a wanting
to that.
he's a wanting
well.
to go home. That's literally his whole mission. He just wants to go
And
home.
they just
Well-
kill him.
Yeah.
Well, and also,
So much for justice.
Hey, listen.
Yeah.
He was trying to like terraform the whole planet. You gotta kill him.
well, there's also with
So it
these
was
characters.
just Superman again.
Yeah, you gotta
Well,
talk
it
over
wasn't
them,
just
Derek.
it wasn't
Derek?
just Superman. It
Oh,
was
no,
like
I'm
all.
sorry, terraform my planet. That's exactly what Zod was doing.
It was a Man of Steel again.
They just copied
Oh
the
my
plot.
gosh.
This movie, which I haven't seen, is trash.
I haven't seen anything DC, and I don't care to.
You haven't
my
seen the 4-hour Snyder cut, Nick?
No, no, and I don't want to. Please don't make me see it.
If Nancy can watch it, you can watch it.
No,
Nick.
that's Nancy's bad choice.
Also, side note, she was talking about how Batman isn't a real superhero in the Zack Snyder movies.
Can we do Batman v Superman and the Snyder cut?
He's not gonna do this.
Seven hours of Zack Snyder.
That sounds like a waste of time.
Look, definitely not the Justice League. Batman vs Superman is a maybe, but it's still it's not a good movie. Why do you guys like this movie? It's not
so
good.
Fun though.
No, it's not.
It can get fun. When they come in, is she with you? I thought she was with you.
No, none of those. No,
It's not that good.
it's not good.
So, okay.
No.
There's no way that you can say that movie is better than Batman Returns.
No, I mean,
No, I'd like put them up side by side.
I have to watch Batman Returns fully again. However, I would still pop in Batman versus Superman.
Why?
Because I love putting people together. Bruce Wayne meets Clark Kent.
That's
Because it's like, what if these characters were just like, it's like, okay, you know why I love this universe? Because it's like the Injustice universe. It's not the normal Batman, Superman universe. This is the Injustice universe where Superman snaps and he kills everyone because of Lois Lane, because Batman...
So you like things that aren't good?
I like
No.
things...
Superman's not good and the movie's not good.
Well,
Yes,
no,
he
this is just an
turns
alternate
good.
universe
Yeah,
that Joe likes.
It's an alternate
Okay,
universe.
okay.
It is a whole alternate universe.
So I'm just looking at it as the universe, and it just is not very good to me. But now you're coming from a perspective that this is the abnormal.
Yes.
And you like that.
Yeah.
I do have that perspective.
Yeah,
as
it's
Joe
at-
as
So
well.
that
not
makes a
the
little
main-
more sense.
Yeah. So
But
you like-
still, if it's on a level playing field, this is not an entertain. This is not done very well.
So
I'm
you
sorry.
like the difference of Lex Luthor being not.
I can see where they were going for. I can see that this orphan boy was abused by his father and he didn't know how to cope. So he literally is just so awkward that he doesn't know how to operate in front of people. He's
You guys are using the contrarian view here. You're sinking into the contrarian on this.
Nick,
But that's literally what he was.
Nick, is Batman Returns the best Batman film?
Probably not, but it's still like way up there. It's
Because
very, very good.
I can still make you the contrarian somehow.
No. It probably is, but I think it's just fun. I think it's just in the
Batman
same vein.
versus
In the same
Superman,
vein,
but yeah.
we're coming from
So-
the same perspective.
So-
only
it's fun.
the
So-
taste is different.
But in all seriousness, though, so like the fantasy films, like the Snyder cut of Justice League, it's about exploring a world,
Yeah.
right? So like we get the mythological backstory, for example, with the Amazons and the lanterns and
like the
mother boxes,
Yeah.
right? That's very fantasy,
Yeah.
high fantasy epic there, where
It
we're
feels like a
really
Lord of the Rings thing.
it does
Okay.
it
Yeah,
does feel
that feels
that
like a Lord
movie
of the-
does feel like Lord of the Rings, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like derogatory, like legitly.
It
Feels big. It's a big movie.
I do like how it feels big, like Derek just said. It feels like a whole epic thing. Like if it feels more epic than a Marvel movie. Like
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I would
Really?
watch
Yes,
that over
yes.
Avengers
Yeah.
any day.
What?
yeah.
I would still watch Infinity War over it, but
Well,
however,
I-
it feels like a larger stake.
But
than
like compared to
Infinity
the
I can
like,
understand that.
but
Yeah.
compared to the
Okay.
first Avengers movie,
Yeah.
where it's like about getting this team together, this movie is way
It's like
stronger at it, way better.
We still lose, and like if we didn't have, if all of us weren't working together, the Earth would have died. We needed everyone was important in saving this and saving.
and the movie
universe.
does a good job setting up of it why it has to be those people.
Are we on Justice League or Batman?
Justice
vs.
League,
Superman?
Justice
Okay,
League.
I haven't seen that.
I know,
No.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Batman Returns is also fantasy as well. So what draws you to that, Nick?
Fantasy.
Penguins with rockets on their backs.
I shouldn't have taken a shot.
I think the word here is exaggeration. And I remember talking about this the last time
With
we were talking
fantasy,
about-
yeah.
It's so exaggerated, it's so
Yeah.
over the top that one of the key moments is when Penguin is fighting Batman at the end. He's like, "You're just mad that you're not an authentic freak like I am."
Yeah.
And that's like a really deep line when it comes to Batman. And it comes to, I think, even the way that Tim Burton views all of these characters. So I was listening to the way you described the superhero arc, and Batman doesn't have it necessarily in this movie.
No,
but I feel like Penguin is the key hero in this movie.
The Penguin is the protagonist of Batman Returns.
And I think Burton just sees all of these characters as freaks. Like they're all outcasts together.
Yeah.
And it's just a unique spin on it. I like that. I think of The Dark Knight Rises and Batman Returns a lot because they're both trying to liberate people.
Yeah.
And Dark Knight Rises like very realistic terrorism.
Yeah.
Bane, and then you have Penguin, and it's like literally like these army of penguins coming. Like it's so outrageous. It just gives you a break of reality real quick, and you can enjoy it. But I do believe that this is one of the better Batman movies. The Last Jedi. We have to sink back into that one because I do like poking you, Derek, but I also do think that's a good movie. But this one I stand on. Batman Returns is a good Batman movie. So
Batman Returns is infinitely better than Last Jedi. So I'm with you there.
Before we move on, I still want to say this with the Lex Luthor thing too, in defense of the Lex Luthor. I'm doing my Lex Luthor hands. I can understand why he even hates Superman.
Yeah.
Again, someone who's been abused and is like, could probably be, again, with that trauma, blaming God. And here's an individual that is the closest thing to what someone can see as God.
Yes.
And it's like, well, I'm going to take all of my frustration out on you, and how even dare you exist? Because, someone, like he said, no one came down and saved me from Daddy's fists and abominations. No. So again, there's a lot of there's a little bit.
And he created his own abomination.
Yeah, he created his own abomination that was ready to kill him, and the thing that he hated saved him anyways.
They still chose those characters to play, those actors to play those characters. You're still watching Ben Affleck struggle rigidly to play Batman. In my opinion, I'm sorry.
You don't like him as Batman?
Absolutely not.
Wow. His chin doesn't even look right for Batman.
There's even a 1% chance.
You're still watching him scream Martha in the key moment, and like that is so bad. I'm sorry. Like those elements may be there, but how it's executed, Batman Returns is executed way more fun.
If I understand correctly, I think one of the things maybe is like Batman Returns does it. It's a serious film, but it doesn't take itself seriously.
Yeah.
Batman v Superman has a lot of goofy stuff, but it plays it off as like it's really serious, right?
Yeah.
Is that part of the issue there?
Absolutely. And I think it's more fun when you know it's not trying to be serious, but it can also be good at the same time. That balance is hard to do. And I think he does it well. And I think Raimi does it well too in the Spider-Mans and in all of his horror comedies. They're scary, but they're also funny.
Yeah.
Like it's like this is not that serious, but also you get scared.
Yeah.
And I think that's just fun.
Yeah.
And ultimately we're watching these because they're fun.
Yeah.
So
I feel that.
Let's move on to sci-fi next.
And Batman vs Superman is not fun. I'm sorry. It's 3 hours long.
It's fun in a different way.
It's fun in a
Hours
different
long.
way.
I'll
watch 20 hours of the Snyder universe if it wasn't dead. I'm so sad.
All right.
It's dead.
Let's go on to sci-fi next. Sci-fi has all these cool concepts that utilize science, aliens, technology, right? They take place in our world, but they're really stories about what it means to be human and the human experience. So here's some example of some superhero sci-fis. Oh, wait, I'm surprised with fantasy you didn't bring up Guardians of the Galaxy at all, like any of those, Nick.
Oh no, I like them, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I like the third one a lot. The first two I'm not huge on, but I do like the third one.
Yeah. Okay, anyways. So here's some example of some sci-fi superheroes. So we got the original Superman 78, the Richard Donner one with Christopher Reeves. Man of Steel, all 4 Avengers films, X-Men, X2, X-Men Days of Future Past, and Spider-Man No Way Home. So
and
those
Hancock.
And Hancock.
Yeah.
And Hancock. Let's talk about Hancock, bro.
Hancock like strikes me as like a very, very sci-fi like focused superhero movie. Like it's the whole phenomenon behind him being here.
Well, especially in the second half, right? When it starts to reveal his backstory.
What the heck?
Yeah. I haven't seen that one in a while.
Honestly, they should have made a second one, but
No.
I would have liked the second one. See Hancock.
They did make Hancock 2. It's Will Smith's going on the stage and smacking.
Yo, Derek, that was good. Derek, that was good. Derek, that was good. Because I was like, what? They made a second Hancock?
Wow, I didn't think we'd go into that one.
Derek, that was real good, man.
Sorry.
Oh man. I think my favorite out of that bunch though is Days of Future Past as the sci-fi.
More than Avengers Infinity War?
Nothing's ever going to top Avengers Infinity War. So when I say favorite, I mean things beneath.
Sure, beneath Infinity War.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Days of Future Past, that's time travel, so that's automatically like a sci-fi right there.
I love the mechanic of it too, because it still takes it from the comics, but it's like a progression of a character that we've already been following for years.
Yes. That's a story about what it means. I mean, they're all stories about what it means to be human, right?
Yeah.
But what does it mean to hold on to hope, even when things look hopeless?
And it does suck because they still all die anyways, with like Logan.
Yeah, but if we treat it as a movie in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
If we just treat it as what it is, the movie is trying to say that if we can see each other as human, even those like, because the human beings like Trask, they don't see the mutants as human. But if they could see them as human, and if the mutants likewise could see humans, right? Because Mystique just wants to kill them all, Magneto just wants to kill them all. But if we can all just see each other as human beings trying to live together and make this work, it can literally change the course of history. That's what that whole film is about.
Yeah.
Because that act of mercy from Mystique not pulling the trigger and seeing him as like just a human, and then the humans learning to accept the mutants, that changes history and creates a better future.
Yeah.
So that's a great sci-fi classic in those themes there.
I do even like sometimes quote in my head, like, come on, it's okay, we need you to hope again. Like when
I love that line. We need you to hope again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it'd be hard out here, cold road, no blanket.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta get someone a blanket.
Jason, Nick, anything about all those sci-fi films I listed? No. Anything that stand out to you?
I don't think so. I do like the first two X-Men movies, though.
Yeah.
I don't think they're that bad, but
yeah.
Mom loves them.
Remember we watched them all in a row?
Yep.
Nice.
I think in the sci-fi movies that we talked about, the superhero aspect kind of overshadows the sci-fi aspect. Well, you don't really think so much about it.
They blend together, right?
I think
in a way.
I think they blend together. No, they do, but you don't. The science fiction aspect is kind of like just the means to the superhero. Like you don't really think so much about the phenomenon and how that applies to you, how it brings out certain things.
Sure.
You focus mostly on the hero aspect.
Right.
Especially in Hancock, like it doesn't. I think that's because it comes after him being a hero that it kind of blindside you, and you don't really know how to like. What the heck? He's what now?
Yeah.
They are what?
Yeah.
They're part of a pair, and they came from and it kind of
they're like angels or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of blindsides you, and you don't really think so much of that. You're stuck on the superhero aspect of it. So I think that it kind of overshadows the themes of the sci-fi, or at least they're not necessarily digested the way you would a sci-fi film.
So I remember the last time we were talking about sci-fi, it was a journey that started out in the head to try to like solve these grand problems of mankind, and it actually ended up in the heart. Yeah. And you had this experience in the heart. So I was wondering if they're even sci-fi, if they're just placed in these settings that feel like sci-fi. Because then Guardians of the Galaxy, the third one, sounds more like a sci-fi rather than fantasy.
I think that's fair to say, because Guardians 3 is about like the sanctity of life, and
there is this hard experience.
I do think Guardians 3 leans more sci-fi, and I think the first two do lean more. They lean more fantasy overall, but it's weird. The Guardians films are hard to place because they are really they're like Star Wars. Yeah. They're a blend of both. And again, like one thing I didn't really say on the sci-fi episode is that sci-fi came out of fantasy. So like fantasy existed for a long time, and sci-fi got so big that it came out of the fantasy genre. So now it's like its own level. Yeah. But it is like fantasy is its parent. So
I even think with like the Infinity War, the goal is to get the stones before Thanos gets the stones. But the heart of it is the love between Wanda and Vision. The heart is that we are not together, and because we're not unified, we lose.
right. Well, even Thanos' whole dilemma that's very sci-fi, right? You know, there's people don't have enough resources, but I can make it happen. But this is that's classic science fiction right there. I have a soft spot too. I love the original Superman film. Maybe it's a 70s thing because the 70s I think is the. I've been thinking about it more, Nick, since our horror episode. I really do think the 70s might be the top decade for film. And the
70s and 90s.
And the
90s
fact,
are low key good too.
Yeah, but the fact that we had like
the
the Superman film come out in 1978, it's so good for what it like for the time it came. Like it gets so much right for it being the first major superhero film. It's just there's so many good things about it. Really, really good film. And it has a Don Corleone in it.
Does it really?
Marlon Brando is
Lex Luthor?
no, Marlon Brando is his dad, not the what's his name? Not Kal-El. Jor-El?
Jor-El?
Yeah, he's Jor-El.
Jor-El.
So the Godfather is Superman's
That's funny.
Kryptonian dad.
That's funny.
Yeah. Lex Luthor is Gene Hackman, who we've also talked about on here too. So
Gene.
yeah. All right. So moving on to
Put
the
Jesse
next one.
Eisenberg. Come on, guys. Come on, guys.
You go
Can
from
you
Gene-
stop?
I'm not okay.
Come on.
Again.
Stop. You guys gotta stop.
Maybe
stop.
he wasn't the best pick for that Lex Luthor.
No,
However,
no.
the idea of that Lex Luthor.
You go from Gene Hackman to Jesse Eisenberg.
I love putting people together. If man cannot kill God, the devil would do it.
They could have had anyone else say those lines though, and be better.
They could have had me do it. I would go bald.
Yeah, that might be better.
Actually,
even.
no, I wouldn't go bald. I'd be terrified that I wouldn't grow my hair back.
So you guys weren't on when we did the historical narrative genre. And so the war genre is part of that, right?
Wonder Woman.
Yes. So the first Wonder Woman film would fall under that. A lot of these were, not all of them, some of them are period pieces, but not all of them. But examples of superhero films that merge with a war genre in a sense would be the first Wonder Woman film, Captain America the First Avenger, X-Men First Class, The Dark Knight Rises, and James Gunn's Suicide Squad. So the war genre is really about opposition. It's about you have a side over here, and this is what needs to be done in order to help people. And there's another side here that doesn't want to let that happen. And war films can take on different ways. It could show like the two sides, how they're rallying up, getting ready for a big conflict. It could show like one perspective. So the interesting thing is that several of these films on here were actually said by their directors that they're war films. Like Wonder Woman's obvious it takes place during World War I. Captain America's obvious it takes place during World War II. Some of these are a little less obvious though. So like Christopher Nolan said that The Dark Knight Rises is a war movie. It is like a war on terror. Like that is the movie that he's telling. That's a story he's telling. Each of his Dark Knight films are a different genre actually.
I was wondering what would break first.
And I know Dark Knight Rises is super flawed, but
Dark Knight Rises is absolute trash. But Bane is good.
But I love watching that film.
Yeah.
I love
I'll just skip to the scenes with Bane.
It is a more entertaining film than Batman Begins. Even though Batman Begins is better, Dark Knight Rises has way more entertainment value.
Yeah, because Bane is good.
He's wondering why you would shoot a man before throwing him out of a plane.
It's so good. But another one that's interesting that I didn't really think of is James Gunn's Suicide Squad film.
Oh, yeah, because I'm even thinking, how is that technically a war movie?
I ain't seen it. Wait, that's the one with the big starfish.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's insane.
It's a great
It's
movie.
good?
I love that movie.
Well, the whole idea,
I'll get that one on
think
the
about it, right? Like the whole idea of like, here's a group and they have to infiltrate this place. They have to get in.
Isn't that a spy genre then?
Kind of like First Class also kind of falls into that, but again, those are more like.
But that technically First Class technically takes place like
Cuban Missile Crisis.
That's
It's anchored in a period.
Yeah, that's historical.
But the Suicide Squad, I got to pull this up because I heard this is something I read in the screenwriter's taxonomy, and this is when I was like, "Yep, James Gunn Suicide Squad has to be a war film," like according to this definition here.
Whilst talking about First Class is an excellent X-Men.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, but yeah, I like. That's all I gotta say.
First Class is good.
Top 3.
You like First Class too, right, Nick?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think I like the X2 better than First Class.
Oh, see, I think First Class destroys it. It's like all the stuff with like Magneto. It's kind of like Inglourious Bastards in a superhero film.
Yeah, that was pretty sick.
There's a different feel though in X2. I don't know how to explain it. It's like in the Raimi movies. The feel of the Raimi movies is different than the Amazing Spider-Man's.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to explain that.
It's that reboot.
I don't know if it's nostalgic or what.
It might be.
Yeah.
I remember getting the X2 DVDs for Christmas, so maybe I'm just
biased.
Maybe I got to let the past die.
Oh no, Magneto moving the satellite tower was a really cool moment.
I remember. I remember those montages and the like the screen filling up with all those clips. I don't know the style of First Class. I don't think I like very much, but.
It feels
I like it. It feels like a comic book, the way it breaks up the panels and stuff.
I was even going to say, like, it feels like...
So you're coming from that comic book, like, history.
But as a film, it's a terrible adaptation of the source material.
Is it?
It's really bad. But
and you like it?
I do.
Surprising.
It is.
Yeah.
But it makes... I think the drama between Xavier and Magneto, like, that's the heartbeat of the film.
Yeah.
It really shows like the war that's gonna brew between them.
Yeah.
And it shows X-Men First Class is ultimately like a movie where there's a war being fought, but that's not the real war. The real war is in the making, and it's not till you get to the beach.
Yeah.
That's when the war really starts. And it starts with a man holding another man who just basically moved a bullet into his spine and paralyzed him, and then looking at each other and saying, like, I don't believe we're on the same side. Like, that is...
I wanted us to be together. No, brother. You do not. Like, oh. We want the same things.
So, okay, so here's what going back to Suicide Squad, the James Gunn Suicide, not the trash Suicide Squad. That's one of the worst films ever.
Actually, I like that Suicide.
No.
I like it just a little bit.
You don't want that on the record.
I like it just a little. I
you don't want that on the record.
I watched it with Dre. We didn't hate it. Wasn't the
Let's
best.
go back to my house with a bear rug and some grape soda.
with what's his name?
Jared Leto.
Killer Croc doing a little roll. Is that a horrible movie?
I'm not gonna kill you. I'm just gonna hurt you really, really bad.
Oh my gosh! I thought the best part was Jared Leto talking up the role, and then just
it is just
being
horrible.
like nothing. Like they cut out a lot of what he did apparently, and then it just left.
That's why you got to watch the extended cut. You know.
I don't have no hope that it's any better.
It's all right.
Is it like, he's still like, it's gonna be the start thing.
He's still not the best part of the movie.
All right, going back to James Gunn's Suicide Squad, not that trash, is this idea here, so that the war film typically is an ensemble that tells the story of a small group of isolated individuals who one by one get killed by an outside force till there is only a small group left to confront the enemy in a fight to the death. The idea of facing death and a final battle between deathly forces are the lead visceral expectations in a war film. That very much is the pattern of that Suicide Squad movie. To the point where all the characters are willing to risk their lives to fight a giant starfish.
Yeah. You see him? That's your mom. And the fact they got Idris Elba, you know, that's always a great thing.
Yeah. And the tropes are from war movies as well. So usually there's a soldier that is very like bloodthirsty. There's a soldier that is like the commander and they're very straight, right? Like kind of like Idris Elba. There's someone who's like struggling with some sort of interpersonal family drama, right? That's playing. So it's like a lot of the tropes of war films are in those characters.
Yeah. A King Shark is a shark.
Yeah.
Dumb
and
idiot.
and the big
Powerhouse.
Yeah.
and the big thing that he says is that in a war film, anyone can die at any time because it's a war and no one is truly safe.
Yeah.
I'm like that.
Mm-hmm.
The first scene in that movie communicates that.
Yeah.
When the first batch all get absolutely obliterated.
Wiped
I'm like,
out.
this is a war movie.
Yeah.
It's a funny war movie, but it's like Tropic Thunder. It's
Yeah.
hilarious, but it is.
I love Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
Side note.
Yep.
Side note there. All right, we got a couple more genres left, and then we're done. All
I'm
right,
a dude
so-
playing a dude disguised as another dude. Wait. Don't you know our people have suffered that word through years? What?
So for the crime genre, we did something a little different. We did an analysis of The Godfather and No Country for Old Men, but there are some superhero films that fall into the crime genre. Mainly Batman films. So we've got Tim Burton's Batman 89. We've got Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. We've got Zack Snyder's masterpiece, Batman v Superman. We've got Matt Reeves' The Batman. And we've got Zack Snyder's other film that is pretty awesome, Watchmen. So those are examples of crime where we're really focused on there's some sort of crime that's central to the story that the protagonist has to solve. That's the main story
The
there.
Dark Knight obviously sticks out the most. Or
Yeah.
at least to me.
Or
It
that-
feels more like a crime story than a superhero story.
That
Yeah.
or the Batman. I feel
That's
like.
one where I feel
Yes.
like the
Yeah.
crime. I feel like the crime overtakes the superhero part, right? But it is an interesting superhero and what it says about what it means to be a hero, right?
Yeah.
Especially with the ending of like, well, is Batman gonna be the scapegoat so that, right? And of course, we know in Dark Knight Rises how that works out. But
Yeah.
it's interesting, like, in well, what does it mean to be a hero? What, right? What does it mean to be a symbol? So,
Yeah, it's Batman.
and the amount, yeah, it's basically Batman.
I really liked how the Batman took it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you like about that?
Just it wasn't super loud and flashy. It went through the grime and the work of being Batman and being a detective
Yeah.
and going through all these mind games with a very much disturbed and traumatized criminal. And I really liked how there's a lot of social commentary in this, and I really believe if the Riddler, if there was a man who was killing corrupt politicians and individuals
Mm-hmm.
in the real world, it was and this was a very scary thought, they would be getting cheered on, like social media. There would be a following. They'd be
Yeah.
I
like,
think that aspect
bravo.
of it.
Like, and so that showed how there's a lot of people who just have crime in their hearts and like vengeance.
Yeah.
They want vengeance, even for the greater good. And Batman was confronting that in himself and realizing that that's the path that he was going down. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
he wasn't really making a difference in the crime in Gotham.
Yeah.
He's like, I thought I'd been doing something, but maybe I've been part of the problem this whole time.
Yeah.
And so I really like how it delved into crime in that way. And I don't think that what I was saying with the sci-fi thing, I think in that instance, those genres didn't overtake each other. They mixed and they blended well. And I think that movie did a really good job of blending those two.
Yeah, I was even thinking it doesn't feel like a movie wrapped around Batman. It feels like it's a crime movie, and Batman is just a character that was dropped in this crime world. Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta say, the last time I watched it, it kind of went down a little bit for me in
Really?
my eyes.
What?
Yeah,
Why?
I think just the flaws became a little more apparent in it, and it wasn't as, I don't want to say good.
Like
it
what?
is good. Well, I really do think that the movie goes a little off the rails with the whole like we're gonna flood everything.
Agreed.
And
The whole
I
back
think
half.
once Riddler is caught, I think
Yeah.
you could still have something after.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of like, I get to the point when I'm watching it and I'm kind of like, oh, we still got like 40 minutes left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got this whole, and I there's a lot of good things thematically in that. But I think like, I was like, man, like I wish there would have been a little bit more grounded way that they kind of had that final conflict. But I get it. I get the symbolism of a flood. I get what Matt Reeves is saying. So it's not bad by any means. I don't think it's bad at all.
I like how it sets up the next movie, and there's a lot of possibility with it. And then it reminds me of the Arkham games where there was an old Arkham that was underwater, and then the new Arkham was built on top of that.
Right.
So that, I know this is Gotham and it's different, but, you know, I wasn't expecting that at all, and I just thought it was a really cool thing.
Yeah. I also just think that Batman is not a great detective. He's a very
he stumbles into
he's very reactionary, and I get it. He's young. He doesn't really know, right?
He's 2 years old.
But I'm like, there's kind of this sense of like Batman is just basically hobbling along, and everything is going the way Riddler plans it to.
Yeah.
And it's not until even the flood, Batman fails to save it. The only thing he does is he just gets some people out. But it's like, there's a part of me that watches the movie and I'm just kind of like with Nancy there, like, wow, Batman kind of sucks.
Right
Well, Batman's power is only because he's rich. Yeah.
I'm kind of like, wow, Batman really doesn't.
But I see that as
I know.
How can you make something best in the failure that you are?
No, I get it. I get it,
but he still sucks.
I get it.
He wasn't over here investigating.
It's fine.
It's kind of hard to stop.
It's a good movie. It's like an 8 out of 10 movie. It's an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
So it's still really good.
That's hilarious.
But it's just not as good as when I first saw it.
Yeah.
It's worn down a little bit for me. Whereas something like The Dark Knight, every time I see it, I'm just like, yeah, this is
still the best.
This is good. All right. But anyways, 2 more left. So the Western genre, there's only one that I could think of. And that's Logan.
Bang, bang.
That's it. I don't, that's the only superhero Western I could think of was Logan. And Logan, we talked about this in the Western episode, that Logan pays homage to a lot of Westerns, especially Shane and Unforgiven.
Even the comic of what Logan
Old Man Logan?
Yeah, Old Man Logan is like, that is more of a Western.
Oh, 100%.
Than the actual, I feel like, than the actual movie is, but it's still those elements of it that they carry over.
Because Logan is tonally and stylistically like a Western. Like it's shot in these like desert landscapes. The music is very Morricone like influenced. I actually thought Morricone did the score when I first watched the film, and then I saw the composer. I'm like, oh, you're a good Morricone imitator, because you would have fooled me. Like this was this is like that kind of film. But I mean, the Western story is all about grit. This like gritty depiction of order taming chaos. The morally gray, like ambiguity of it all, right? Like that really, to me, that's a lot of Logan. And about corruption, decay, all that kind of stuff. So
I also read somewhere that in Westerns, there's the protagonist will go outside the law or attempt to establish order to basically to protect a community. And that's what Logan does in this. Is there's a community of mutants, and there's a corrupt law going to oppress that group and to just terrorize, and he goes out of his way to protect that. And he doesn't want to at first. And I'm thinking of Tombstone, like he's like, I have no business. I want out of here. I don't care about this. I like I've already got a guilty conscience. I just want to go and do something else. But he's driven, and he goes back into it. Yeah, and he gives his life for it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's the superhero part.
You know, in my opinion, though, I think Logan, I think I've said this before on the podcast, I think Logan is the best made superhero film of all time. And I think why is because I think better than any other film, it allows the genre to inform it. Like Logan is more of a Western than a superhero film, but it does the superhero story in a way that works with the Western. What I think, I've been thinking about what you guys were saying a while ago, and I think you're right, that a lot of the times the superhero genre tries to eclipse the other genre, or it tries to like just pay homage or like just integrate the genre. I think Logan is the opposite. Yeah. I think Logan literally recrafts the idea of a superhero story around a Western.
So it submits to the Western.
It submits to the Western. And that's why I think Logan is the best made film, because I think it's so confident in what it's doing in both of those. It fully embraces, like James Mangold fully embraces all the things that make up a Western.
Yeah.
To where I could classify Logan as a Western
Western,
before a superhero film. But even the superhero commentary on it about Logan going to Laura and being like, this is not how it is in the real world, right? Like there's a commentary
In the real world,
on
people
the
die.
Yes.
Like, dang, bro.
There is a commentary on the superhero genre in Logan.
Yeah.
And James Mangold is almost saying, like, how does the superhero genre have it maintain its place in a world where we know that things aren't really like that? And that's going to go to my criticism that I have for the superhero genre in a moment that I'm going to share with you guys. But I think James Mangold's hitting on something there. Like, it's not that these stories don't have value. It's that we need to view them through a realistic lens and not see them as something that's unattainable for us.
Yeah.
And I think Logan is about how can a man, because Logan is a superhero in a sense, but there's a brokenness to him.
Yeah.
So how does Logan still embrace the superhero story with all his flaws?
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And even like the way that it depicts a family, like a normal family.
Yep.
What happens if a normal family gets brought into the superhero story?
Gets slaughtered, man.
And I think James Mangold is saying something there because literally in the final battle, the only non-super entity is the scientist, and he just gets taken out in one shot, right? I think he's saying something about the fragility of humans that we aren't capable of fully embracing the superhero genre. So it's almost like he's finding a way to tell it in a way that is accessible for us. And the Western is how he does that. That's the genre that he chooses, a genre that's rooted and grounded in a real time period in history. And I think that's really fascinating.
It's the Westerns are like experiencing your own mortality, because at the end, most of the time, the person in the Western dies.
And the superhero genre is the opposite.
Yeah.
Most of the time they die and they come back or whatever, right? To actually have a story where death is very real for superhero, like Charles Xavier. You're going to take out the most powerful mutant, Omega level, in just by getting stabbed. And just the fragileness of like even his like mind disease, right?
That's not just getting stabbed.
Yeah, like that. Like
that's a slow knife.
The face of his friend.
Logan is the best like in my opinion, it is the best well-crafted superhero movie.
Is that on Criterion? Because that would be
amazing.
So I actually sent a letter to Criterion
to say
recommended why Logan. So,
another side note, my mom loves this movie, and like I'll show you guys a video afterwards, but in the beginning scene where Logan's just chopping up dudes, I recorded her. She absolutely loves Logan. Like, absolutely. Wolverine is her favorite.
Yeah.
Loves Logan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
It's the best.
So the last genre I want to talk about, and we can do this really briefly, is the horror thriller genres. And there's only a few here that I put down. I put Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Trash. I mean Madness. Joker.
Dunk on him.
Joker and Chronicle.
Chronicle.
Chronicle is good.
Chronicle is great.
Chronicle is good.
Yeah.
I think of also Brightburn, but I haven't seen that.
Yes, thank you. Brightburn would fall into
I
that
haven't
as well.
seen Brightburn either. But out of those with Chronicle is like literally a tragedy of friends just crumbling down because of someone's own self-image of themselves.
So Chronicle and Kick-Ass have very similar premises, except Chronicles is with superpowers and Kick-Ass isn't with superpowers.
Yeah.
Yep. But very similar thematically.
Yeah.
Chronicle's amazing.
I've
Great
not
film.
seen. I haven't even heard of Chronicle until
Really?
right now. Yeah,
Michael B. Jordan's in
So
it.
the entire film, Jason, is shot through video cameras.
Yeah, it's like
Really?
It's found footage.
That's kind of cool.
So the entire film uses video cameras.
It has Michael B. Jordan, the guy that played
Dane
Green
DeHaan,
Goblin.
Dane DeHaan.
Green Goblin in the Amazing Spider-Man
Oh,
movies.
Harry.
Yeah.
And then what is the
I
other
don't
guy
remember
been
the
in?
other guys.
Yeah, but he's been in stuff.
Yeah.
I forget, but
Chronicle's good.
yeah.
Oh,
Chronicle's-
wait a minute. I've seen
Chronicle's
this
a really
clip
good-
before.
Yep. So that's from Chronicle.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good movie.
I remember when Chronicle came out in 2012 and he had been cast as Harry Osborn, and he has that scene where he destroys a spider and everyone's like, foreshadow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chronicle's
that
good.
kind of looks
I seen this a
wild.
long time ago,
That
but it's
cover.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's a horror. Like what happens, the horror. So the way that Max Landis interprets it is what happens if you get superpowers in the real world. It actually, your life turns into a horror story.
Mm-hmm.
Your fears come to life.
It even reminds me of Megamind when the guy is given powers, but again, his character does not deserve these powers, and he uses these powers to harm others because of what he's experienced.
Yeah.
Did we say this? I've heard this somewhere, but the superpowers just amplify who you are. Inside.
Yes.
That's from
That's
Captain
what-
America.
They don't make you a good person.
Yeah, that's what Chronicle is all about.
Yeah.
It's all about
And
that.
I think
Yeah.
of Megamind, which is an amazing film that could be on Criterion.
that needs to be talked about.
I'll write that letter.
Chronicle could be a Criterion film. I don't know about Megamind.
Nah, Megamind needs to be on
But
that.
I
I'd pick
also-
Megamind over Chronicle.
I also think of The Boys.
You guys need to recheck what Criterion. Go on their website and read what a Criterion film is,
And
and then
Megamind-
come back and say what you think.
Okay,
I don't think Megamind would fall under
even
I
Criterion.
without
don't think so
knowledge.
either.
I'll
But
tell you that
anyways-
Transformers Dark of the Moon should be on the list.
So I
If
also
they freaking put Michael Bay on Criterion, I wouldn't put it.
I
The Rock is worth it though.
so when I think of these things, I also think of The Boys and Invincible.
Oh yeah,
Invincible's great, yeah.
yeah.
The Boys like completely shocked me. That's almost like horror slice of life.
Yeah.
Superhero.
At Invincible, I remember I was showing Nick and our other friend Will that's Invincible,
Wild.
but we watched
It is Invincible, yeah.
Yeah, we watched the first episode and it was like, oh, generic, superhero stuff, and then it got to the
Everybody's
end.
head started
Yeah.
blowing
It
off,
just
and I was
started
like,
getting more. But again, even I feel like the thing that shows the horror aspect the most of it is at the end when the dad is torturing his son, having an experience like, oh, look at these humans that you want to protect, but not understanding that because they're so fragile, they're worth being protected.
Yeah.
Like that's what Vision was saying in Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
There's grace in their families.
Yeah.
And you missed that. Yep. You're incredibly naive.
I was born yesterday.
Yeah. This is what it's all building towards for me. This episode is called Why We Love Superheroes. But ironically, in this past year of 2023, I've been finding myself falling out of love with the superhero genre, which is strange because most of these genres we've talked about, I've actually found myself pressing more into. But this is one genre that I've actually been feeling myself pull back from a little bit. And I've been asking myself why.
There's no heart.
Well, I think in thinking about a lot of stories now, right? I think the superhero genre has become so oversaturated. It's very commercialized. It's very...
There's nothing heavy with it.
It's
just
thin.
fluff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's become thin. It's become fluff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of disappointment.
Yep.
Back in the 2000, like from 2008 to 2018, I would say we got an average of at least one like absolutely spectacular superhero film every year. Like absolutely like great.
Yeah.
Now I'm lucky if every couple years I get a superhero film that's good. Like not even amazing, just good. My bar is so low now.
Yeah.
Other than like seeing how the Spider-Verse, how that trilogy is going to conclude, there's not really anything I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm just burnt out on it all. Even like Deadpool 3, which sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
It seems like it's going to be
But-
Deadpool kills the X-Men universe.
Yeah. Well, and I
like
just
the Fox universe.
I don't trust Disney to make a good Deadpool like film. I just don't.
Wait, Disney's doing it?
Because
Yeah.
they own
'Cause
they
they
own
own-
Fox, they own
yeah.
X-Men and all those movies now.
So I really don't trust that.
Viewers,
Yeah.
my
But-
face has fallen.
They say
But-
it's going to be rated R still, but it's still like the fact that Disney still has control of that.
Well, I think the thing
Yeah.
that bothers me is like Logan is such a perfect ending for the Fox universe. They keep trying
bring those characters.
bring it back. Like after Logan, they did. I'll give Deadpool 2 a pass because that like is supposed to be like a coda that like thematically ties in with Logan, but in a comedic way. So I'll give that a pass.
Then they did
but
Dark
like
Phoenix.
Dark Phoenix,
Yep.
New Mutants.
Yep.
Professor X and Multiverse of Trash, and now the fact that they're bringing Hugh Jackman back in Deadpool 3.
But he's going to be comic book accurate
I don't
with
care,
his costume.
though. I don't care.
Isn't that the appeal of the movie?
I think that's why I'm burnt out. I think that's why.
Yellow.
Yeah,
I think that's
he's
why
wearing
I'm
yellow.
I think that's why I'm burnt out. Is because I'm just like, I think I've gotten what I need from this genre. It's done what I've wanted it to do for me in my life, and I don't know what else I can give it or it can give me anymore. And so I keep thinking about the struggle I have. And I don't think it's just what we're talking about, though, Joe. I don't think it's just these things. I think there's something deeper that I've noticed in these stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that the superhero genre can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can inspire us to be better, to be heroic in our lives. But in another way, it could actually take away that responsibility by making us place it on someone else. So a lot of superhero stories, I started to watch really closely, a lot of them. And besides the fact that there were other films that I was thinking of that I was like, oh man, I'm watching Wonder Woman right now, but I'd rather go watch 1917 if I want to watch a World War White. So like, I'm thinking like, shoot, I'd rather watch other films in other genres around these kinds of stories for a lot of them. But except for Logan, like Logan is like, gosh, it's just a Western through and through, and I love it. But I thought about, like, I started to notice how, like, if you're a common person and you're trying to do the right thing and you don't have like you're basically like punished in these films. Like, it's almost like you are not capable of doing this, right? And we could talk about maybe how like this is like superhero films get compared to like the gospel a lot, right? A lot of Christians will compare them to Jesus. And I think that's a fair comparison. The idea that you have to trust something higher than yourself, right?
No, but I can understand that because like with the new Secret Invasion, I watched that fully with Nick Fury, but Nick Fury was like railed on like in this show. Like, you are just this sad old man now and you can't do anything and you need these other people to do stuff for you. But this is a person who like, that has formed the Avengers, that is a international spy that is 30 steps ahead before you even know what the next step is. And it's like they brought him down. They did the Luke Skywalker to him. They did the Indiana Jones 5 to him. Yeah. And that's what I feel like that's what Disney's doing, is just like showing that these characters, when you grow old, it's just downhill for you. Like you have no other value left.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, along with that as well, in a lot of these superhero films, there's this idea that like might makes right. Problems can only be solved through violence. And I'm like, the more I think about that, I'm just like, but most of our problems don't actually. So what does it mean to be heroic in these movies? Most of the time, it's a good guy that has to physically restrain and put down a bad guy. But that's not actually heroic, what it means for us in our everyday lives to be heroic, right? And so there's that aspect I struggle with as well in a lot of these films, the more that I think about it. And then we've talked a lot in this retreat about like being active versus passive in our life. And I started to realize like in these movies, the villains actually are the active ones that are out there trying to like do something. And the heroes are the passive ones reacting to whatever the villain does. And I'm like, that's not the kind of life I want. That's not heroic. And there's this weird, like unintentionally, like holding up the status quo where, and this is, to be fair, this is a criticism that's embedded in some superhero stories, but this idea that like villains are almost created because of superheroes and they don't actually allow heroes to deal with everyday problems. I think the exception to this is like the Daredevil TV show, where you have a man who's able to, in his personal life and his superhero life, he's able to deal with one problem that's a real world problem, but also like it's a problem that requires both. So I still think the Daredevil TV show is a great example of how to do the superhero story in a way that makes real people like it gives us a place in the story. But yeah, I mean, I struggle. I think about how these stories, when they were created, were targeted for young people, and that it's targeted at a group of people that has a lot of potential, with a little bit of rebellion, and it like helps to channel that rebellion in a way. by identity, like, right? Like create an identity, like create a costume, but like don't upset the status quo too much, because the villains are the ones who actually, like when I watched Incredibles 2, this was one of those light bulb moments when I heard the screenslaver give that speech to Elastigirl as she's going through, and I'm like, holy crap, screenslaver's right. And I was like, this is not good, because this Incredibles 2 and Incredibles 1, but Incredibles 2 is really talking about how like superheroes defer our responsibility. And the fact that like that guy, her father died because he didn't want to take action to save his family.
Yeah.
He relied on someone else. That's a fair criticism.
Yeah.
And the fact that like the superheroes are asserting themselves to try to save the day, to preserve the status quo so that they can do what they're doing, but that doesn't teach the common person. In fact, it actually punishes the common person
for
trying. Well, in the first movie with Syndrome, it punishes the common person for trying to be the hero. And of course, it makes them out to be the villain. Yeah. And so ultimately, I'm struggling with this genre, and this is the last thing I'll say on it, and then I want to hear your thoughts on it. I feel like there's two stories in comics that really kind of show where I'm at with the superhero genre right now. One is Dark Knight Returns, where I love that when Batman gets out there and starts doing his thing again, it inspires other people to do their thing, right?
You're talking about the animated movie.
Well, yeah, but the graphic novel, right, that it's based off of. But yeah, where you have like the people who are like, this is my shop, this is my neighborhood, and Batman taught me to stand up for it, right?
We are the sons of Batman.
Yeah.
Well, and even the idea, because I think the Dark Knight Returns is onto something in terms of how we take on the superhero genre. Because there's this idea that Batman sets a principle. Now, obviously, I don't agree with some of the principles, right? But I think the idea of what Frank Miller's doing in that story is like Batman sets a pattern, something larger than us sets a pattern and models a heroic way. Then it's up to us to go out in our everyday life
and model that
in our own way, model that pattern
and create a community
and create a community around doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think that's the superhero story. I think that's what we could take a value.
Yeah.
The other story is the comic book you read it, Nick, is the Marvels. You see superheroes from the eyes of an ordinary man, and he's like enamored by them. He looks up to them, right? He sees them as this larger than life, that they're going to solve all our problems. And then he watches Spider-Man fail to save Gwen. And he realizes superheroes can't be everything for us, and we shouldn't expect them to be. And so he decides at the end of that graphic novel, there's a time when I needed the superheroes to inspire me, to teach me what it means to be a man, how to be heroic in the world. But there comes a time where you see the flaws, and he sees the flaws of the character of Spider-Man, that he can't be everything, and he can't do everything. He can't even save, the one he loves. And I think metaphorically, I'm seeing the flaws of the superhero genre. I'm seeing that these films can't be everything that I want them to be, and that I've come to a place where I need to take what I can from the ones that have meant the most to me, like the Spider-Verse films, like Logan, like the Dark Knight Returns, right? Like some of the ones we're talking about here. And it's ironic as I'm thinking about it here, all these stories have something to do with parenting. And that speaks to the season of life that I find myself in. And there's things that I as a parent can glean from these stories that I mentioned, and finding myself identifying more with Peter B. Parker than Miles, or even Miles and Gwen's parents. Or like Logan, overcoming his selfishness, rushing down the mountain to clear a path for his daughter and her friends, so that their generation can have a better life than he could ever have dreamed of for his own. And so how to pass the superhero genre on to the next generation, to my own children, and what that looks like. But I think there's a part of me that's saying, I think it's time to move on.
That was so sad.
Yeah. It's like a breakup.
Yeah, it sounds like...
This is my breakup episode.
Like a breakup.
It sounds like this is some kind of maturation process. that like these characters are needed in our childhood, like these aspirational archetypes.
Yeah.
And then they're still a part of us because we have that inner child and we still need those things. But the problem comes when it's out of balance and that's all you're relying on and you don't take responsibility and you become passive and you start to become diluted in who these characters really are. And I think that's what Martin Scorsese was talking about.
Yeah.
When it's all that you know is this one genre and this one character, it becomes a problem.
It's like how the scripture says that like it's time to put childish things away.
Yeah.
It's like putting that childish that toy in the box.
Well, and I think there's still a certain place for certain stories. And I think all of us listening, we all have to figure out which superhero stories, like Black Panther's like a great superhero story that has a lot of meaning for a lot of people, right? And I think we have to find out what those stories are for us. And like, you know, like the leap of faith for Spider-Verse is forever going to be how I see my business. Like everything I do in all things narrative and starting a business is that leap of faith.
Yeah.
Right. Logan, like there's certain stories like the Daredevil show that just have things that I need for life. And I need to go back to those things because they help me understand what it means to be a heroic human. Right. But I think as a whole, I think my love and infatuation with the genre, I think has faded because I've recognized that I feel like it's even embedded in the narrative. And I think that's what Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross were trying to say through the Marvels is that there comes a time when you love the genre, you're inspired by it, you're enamored by it. But then there's a time when you see the flaws that you have to give it to, because the guy, Phil, the main guy in that story, he gives the stories to someone young because he's a reporter and a photographer. He gives the stories to someone younger and he says, now these stories are for you, right? But they're not for me anymore. Yeah. And I'm like, I think that's where I'm at right now with this genre that I love, but I think my relationship with it has changed.
And I think what you're talking about with the Dark Knight Returns, that's really it, is because Batman is old and he's eventually going to die, but he's leaving a legacy.
Yes.
And the legacy inspires a community to work and train and together grow to protect their neighborhood, their environment, to be what their hero represented. And so it's not like in the movie, it's like not that Batman shouldn't have ever existed. It's that there was a time for him, and now there's something new, and now the people, the civilians, are coming out of the background, and they're taking over the story. Yeah. And they're taking over their own story, and not just letting, like you guys are saying, the hero do it anymore.
And so Batman dies, like there's a death he experiences, right? Yeah. And I think that's interesting as well, commentary, is that the superhero, and Logan does it too, the superhero has to die in some way so that we can move forward. Yeah. Whether it's Laura, right?
What's wrong with The Last Jedi then? What is wrong? Oh my gosh, no. This is all gonna start all over right now. We're going another 2 hours right now.
I need something to drink.
Derek,
we're done.
No, we are not done. That's crazy. We're all walking away right now.
Okay, no. I think
crazy.
I think the reason why
that is crazy.
I think the reason why people have a hard time accepting that for Last Jedi is because they twist in their mind. They twisted Luke's character. Logan, you can say, he doesn't give an F about people. He's gotten to this place. He's experienced 2 different timelines where his friends and family die, and he was already a loner. Luke was someone that would never.
It's not consistent with his character.
It's not consistent with his character. Yeah, so it's more twisting a character for a story than allowing the story to correct around.
Exactly what I was gonna say.
Batman didn't fall off. He died who he was. I still need a drink because we mentioned Last Jedi.
Gotta refill. Well, I think that's where we're gonna wrap the Why We Love Superhero episode. But
my way was fine.
Anyways, thank you so much for checking out the All Things Narrative podcast. This is your friendly narrative, Derek. This is your friendly narrative practitioner. This is your friendly narrative practitioner, Derek, signing off, saying thank you so much, and until next time.
And remember, God made you special, and He loves you very much. VeggieTales.
Special with superpowers?
Larry Boy, bro. Larry Boy, bro. He was the original superhero.